I was about 13 or 14 years old when this happened. I was alone, just slowly walking home after seeing a few of my girlfriends off. It was getting late, and outside looked a bit dark. I'll guess maybe around 7:30 p.m. I'm about a block and a half away, about to walk up and past a bus stop when the bus pulls up and opens its doors to let off passengers. I think nothing of it and walk past an older man, maybe in his 30s, who was the only person getting off. As I said before, I'm taking my time walking, so I'm not immediately spooked when I hear him singing closely behind me. I'm just thinking to myself, he's probably trying to get past me as the sidewalk is super narrow here. So I pick up the pace enough so the guy doesn't feel like I'm blocking him or something. But even as I walk faster, it seems he just quickens his pace right along with me. At this point, I take notice of what songs he's actually singing. My complete stomach flipping nausea-inducing horror, he's singing an old-school love song. I walk faster still, and he just keeps on matching my quick pace. At this point, he's singing louder and then faster as I go. I'm spazzing in my head right now, and I'm absolutely certain this weird old man is following me. I keep trying to walk faster, and he's just right on my heels. When we get to the sidewalk in front of my lawn, I then take off in a run past my lawn, up the steps, and onto my porch. Of course, I don't have my keys, and so I frantically ring my doorbell and bang on the door for someone to let me in. I look back, and the guy stops walking and stands on the sidewalk in front of my house, staring at me. I'm absolutely terrified, thinking about what his motives could be. Nothing good, obviously, but just how debased and perverse. He then says, "I wasn't trying to scare you." He keeps eye contact for a second and then continues to walk down the street. I was sick to my stomach with anxiety. I'm sure he only stopped because it was clear I was gonna cause a scene. I'm hoping that he thought that I just ran into a random house for help. Otherwise, this dude knows where I live now. My little 12 or 13-year-old sister comes and opens the door for me. She was the only one in the house. I sometimes think about how things might have ended had he seen who'd opened the door. When I started middle school, I had to go there by train because I lived in a rural area, and the next small town with the middle school was about 25 minutes away. I was a sheltered child, and not really used to going there by train on my own every day. That particular day, I was waiting on the platform for the train to finally get home. There were plenty of people, and I noticed this guy who seemed to harass this group of girls. He started touching the hair of one of the girls and telling her something I couldn't hear. I had such a bad gut feeling after witnessing this incident and decided to keep an eye on this guy. When the train arrived, I waited for him to get on, and then suddenly he came my way and touched my hair as well. I was creeped out and said something like, "What the fuck?" He turned around and took a seat in the train, and I went the opposite direction to avoid him. I took a deep breath and took a seat far away from him, but then I noticed that I was on the wrong train, so I texted my dad where I was so he could come and pick me up. He worked close to the town that I went to school. The next stop I got off the train, and there was an abandoned train station with not a single soul there. Guess who was the only person who got off the train with me? Right, the fucking creep. I saw out of the corner of my eye that he was coming my way, and I decided to get away quickly. He followed me, and I felt like his prey. I was so afraid that I had tears in my eyes, and I had no idea what to do. I went behind the train station, and I couldn't see him or hear his footsteps anymore. After a while, I went to the parking lot to wait there for my dad, and the creepy guy came from behind the cabin exactly my way. I will never forget the determined look and the taunting grin on his face. He was already close to me when my dad called. That's when I was kicked out of my state of fear and immediately picked up the phone. I almost screamed my location in the phone and described the creepy guy to my dad. I watched the reaction of the creep, and I could see that he was unsure about what to do now. I just stood there and waited for his decision. He mumbled something like, "Lucky bitch." And with that last deadly stare, he left the parking lot. I don't know what his intentions were, but I'm sure if my dad hadn't called that exact moment, something horrible would have happened to me. I've been reading on here tonight, and I have a few creepy encounters of my own, so I figured, why not? This happened 12 years ago. I was 14 and my sister was 12. It was during summer vacation and we were hanging out, just the two of us, outside. Midday. We lived in a smallish town, where on weekdays it was pretty empty because adults were all at work. Anyway, we'd been messing around picking flowers and other random crap when we decided to cut through the massive field of undeveloped land on the edge of our suburb. It was technically a shortcut to get home, but it wasn't the best idea because it was really bumpy, potted land that other kids and teens left all kinds of shit laying in. Well, our bad decision came around and bit us. We hadn't made it very far in the field when my sister got two bad things at once. Some sort of twisted metal, I don't know, maybe an old piece of a tool, pierced right through her foam flip-flop and into her foot. And right after it happened, she shrieked, jerked, and twisted that ankle on the uneven ground. She started crying and howling, and I was worried. The metal hadn't gone too deep, and I was able to stop the bleeding from the hem of my shirt. But she couldn't walk anymore, obviously. Our parents weren't available, didn't know where we were, and this was before I had a cell phone. My sister was still on the ground crying, and I was trying to calm her down, when something made me feel like looking up. Y'all, it was the feeling of being watched. Out of the field, across the road, standing on the corner in the distance, was some random guy watching us. He was too far away for me to see him clearly. All I could tell for sure was that he was blonde, probably adult, and dressed too warmly for July. He was all alone, stock still and just staring at us. I've always been a skittish horse, so I just looked back at my sister and basically said to get on my back. I was carrying her home, and we were leaving right now. Now, I had to carefully pick my way through this stupid field on my own crappy flip-flops, with my sister crying on my back. Luckily, she was tiny, but I was no linebacker either. It had rained a day ago, and the field had puddles of slimy water in the low spots. We were both kind of wet from her falling and when she got hurt. I swiveled back to check if he was still watching us, and he was. Not only was he watching us, but he crossed the road and entered the field. Now he was standing stock still again and just watching. Ice in the veins does not describe it. One of the scariest moments of my life up until that point. My sister looked back when I looked, saw my face, and started crying even harder. I just shook her a bit on my back and whispered something like, "Stop it. I need to concentrate on getting us home. Watch him and tell me if he starts to follow us again. Just be quiet." So that's what we did. I started walking again as fast as I could without getting hurt. My sister watched him while I carried her. After less than a minute, she whispered to me that he was following again. How fast? Just walking. Is he watching us? Yes. I told her to tell me if anything changed and kept going. I stomped through the puddles I couldn't see into when I had to, hoping there was nothing sharp in them. I lost a flip-flop in the mud, and I just kept going. We were about 3/4 of the way through the massive field when my sister whispered what I at least wanted to hear. He was speeding up. I turned us right around so we were facing him head on, and as loud as I could, I yelled something like, "Hey, we see you. Fuck off and leave us alone. I'll call the cops." He stopped again when I stopped, but gave no sign whatsoever that he'd heard me. Just nothing. I turned us right around again and kept going. My poor little sister was shaking like a leaf and just saying my name over and over again. It was awful, and there was nothing I could do but keep going. Eventually, he started following again at a slow pace. I finally made it to our suburb, out of the muddy field and onto solid concrete. I told my sister to hold on as tight as she could, and I booked it. Started running with her on my back as fast as I could. We couldn't see him anymore, didn't know what he was doing or where he was, and I was going to make it to our house or die trying. Every muscle hurt from carrying her so far. My bare foot was scratched up from the road, but I didn't stop. I kept moving, with my sister looking out behind us. It felt like my heart was going to burst. The fear and suspense was awful. After what felt like forever, I made it to our house, ran across the yard, up the drive, and put my sister down, who'd started crying again. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely use my key. We made it in safely and called my mom. She had us lock every door and window and came rushing home, but nothing happened after that. He never found us, and we never saw him again. And that's the end. I have no idea who he was or why he was fucking with us like that. It gives me chills to this day, the way he'd stopped when I stopped, the way he ignored my yelling. I don't know what he wanted or what he was doing, and I don't want to know.